Too cruel even for their own blood, the black twins of the Ozarks. Abigail and Nora. Their story starts in 1932, in a remote hollow of the Boston Mountains, where ancient oaks were cloaked in mist and secrets were buried deeper than the very roots of the hills. In the deep isolation of Shannon County, Missouri, lived the Caldwell family. The Caldwells were one of the few black families who had settled in this particular part of the Ozarks after the Civil War, unlike many of their white neighbors. Their ancestor, Isaiah Caldwell, a freed slave, had sought refuge in these rugged hills, finding isolation from the hostilities that plagued the Reconstruction-era South. By 1932, the Caldwell line had become increasingly isolated. Virtually non-existent was the road access to their property, connected to the nearest town over 15 miles away by only a winding dirt path. The Great Depression pushed them further into seclusion, making hunger and poverty their constant companions. A stern man with calloused hands and distant eyes, Jeremiah Caldwell was the family patriarch. His wife Sarah had died in 1910, giving birth to their youngest son, Joseph. The family consisted of Jeremiah, his 4 sons, Isaiah Jr., Elijah, Thomas, and Joseph, and Isaiah's daughter, Mary. What little they could grow on their rocky hillside plot and the occasional game they could hunt in the forest was what the Caldwells lived off. Mary Caldwell, a quiet woman, had deep-set eyes that seemed to hold generations of suffering. She walked with a noticeable limp, having been born with a slightly misshapen right foot. Local doctors had no explanation, but whispers in the community suggested bad blood in the family line might be the cause. Mary rarely left their isolated property, both due to her difficulty walking and the cruel treatment she received from townspeople on her rare ventures out. In the spring of 1931, Mary gave birth to twin girls, Abigail and Nora. No husband was ever mentioned, and Jeremiah forbade any discussion of the children's parentage. The twins shared identical features and unusually pale skin for the family, nearly white despite their black heritage, with strange amber-colored eyes that seemed to reflect light like a cat's in the darkness. Different from the beginning, something was about the twins. They developed more slowly than normal children, not speaking until nearly 3 years of age. When they finally began to talk, they communicated primarily with each other in what seemed like their own private language, a series of whispers and half-formed words that only they understood. If you're already subscribed to this channel, you'll want to be notified immediately when new cases are revealed, as some details are too shocking to remain online for long. The only physician in the nearby town of eminence who would treat black patients, Dr. William Harrington, had been called to deliver the twins. Decades later, his medical journal was discovered, containing disturbing notes about the birth. Female twins born to M. Caldwell. Unusual genetic presentation. Both exhibit syndactyly, fused digits on left hands. Possible indications of consanguinity in family line. Patient refuses to identify father. Not unfounded were the doctor's suspicions. The Caldwell family tree had indeed begun to fold in upon itself. Years of isolation and the surrounding community's unwillingness to accept them had left few marriage options. By the 1920s, cousins had married cousins, and the genetic pool had grown dangerously shallow. The most troubling aspect of the twins' birth wasn't in Dr. Harrington's official medical records, but in his private journal. I fear the father of these children may be the patient's own blood relation. The physical anomalies present in both infants suggest a high degree of genetic similarity between parents. When questioned, the grandfather became threatening. I shall not pursue this matter further for my own safety. As the twins grew, more pronounced their peculiarities became. By age 5, both girls displayed unusually heightened sensitivity to sound and light. They would cover their ears and scream when thunder rolled across the hills. Their eyes, already unusual in color, seemed to struggle with normal daylight, causing them to keep to the shadows of the family's small cabin during the day. As the twins grew older, the family's isolation only deepened. Through the scattered communities of Shannon County, rumors spread. Some claimed the twins were the result of unholy relations. Others whispered that their strange appearance and behavior were divine punishment for the family's sins. In the segregated South of the 1930s, the Caldwell family already faced racial prejudice. The rumors about the twins served only to further ostracize them. By 1940, when Abigail and Nora were 9 years old, the family rarely ventured into town. Jeremiah would make the journey alone once every few months for absolute necessities they couldn't produce themselves. The girls were kept hidden away, their education limited to what Mary could teach them from her own limited schooling. It was during this period that the first signs of true darkness began to manifest in the twins. Small animals would disappear around the property, only to be found later, mutilated and arranged in peculiar patterns. When questioned, the girls would respond with identical blank stares, their amber eyes revealing nothing. The first human casualty came in the winter of 1943. Joseph, the youngest Caldwell son, was found at the bottom of a well on the property. His body showed no signs of struggle, but his eyes had been removed with what appeared to be surgical precision. The family was devastated, but with no evidence of outside involvement and their distrust of local authorities, no official investigation ever took place. The twins, now 12, showed no reaction to their uncle's death. Mary began to fear her own daughters, locking her bedroom door at night and keeping a sharpened kitchen knife beneath her pillow. In her private journal, discovered decades later, she wrote, "My girls ain't right. Something inside them ain't human. I fear what I brought into this world. Lord, forgive me for my sins." What Mary feared most, beyond the twins' increasingly disturbing behavior, was the truth about their origins. The secret she had kept hidden for years, even from Dr. Harrington. A secret that explained the twins' unusual appearance, their physical abnormalities, and perhaps even their disturbing behavior. A secret that involved her own brother, Thomas. In the harsh winter of 1930, isolated and with food running scarce, the darkest chapter of the Caldwell family had begun. Thomas, who had always shown unusual attention to Mary, had finally acted on impulses long suppressed. The result of this forbidden union was Abigail and Nora, children born of brother and sister, carrying the compounded genetic legacy of generations of family intermarriage. By 1944, as World War II raged overseas, a different kind of darkness had settled over the Caldwell Hollow. The twins, now 13, had grown tall and eerily beautiful with their pale skin, amber eyes, and long dark hair. They moved in perfect synchronization, finishing each other's sentences when they chose to speak to others, which was rare. Most disturbing was their apparent lack of emotional response to anything. No laughter, no tears, no visible anger. On a cold November night in 1944, Elijah Caldwell became the second casualty. His body was found in the family's tobacco drying shed, positioned in what appeared to be a ritualistic manner, hands crossed over his chest and eyes wide open, staring at nothing. Like Joseph before him, there was no obvious cause of death. This time, however, Mary had witnessed something through a crack in the cabin door. She had seen her daughters leading Elijah toward the shed the previous evening, one on each side, their hands on his arms. He had moved as if in a trance, following them willingly into the darkness. Mary's journal entry from that night reads simply, "God help us all. They've taken Elijah now. I can no longer deny what they are capable of. The sin that created them lives in their blood." If you're already subscribed to this channel, you'll want to be notified immediately when new cases are revealed, as some details are too shocking to remain online for long. By the summer of 1949, the Caldwell family had been reduced to just 4 members: Jeremiah, now in his 70s and increasingly frail, Isaiah Jr., the eldest son, Mary, the twins' mother, and the twins themselves, who had reached 18 years of age. Thomas had disappeared in the winter of 1947, his body never found. The official story was that he had gone hunting and never returned, but Mary knew better, keeping her suspicions to herself. The Caldwell property had fallen into further disrepair. Fields once carefully tended now grew wild with weeds. The family subsisted primarily on what Isaiah could hunt and gather, along with the small garden Mary maintained. Jeremiah, once a commanding presence, now spent his days on the porch, staring vacantly into the distance, mumbling about sins and retribution. What remained of the family had adapted to the presence of the twins, learning to live alongside them like one might coexist with venomous snakes, with constant vigilance. Isaiah slept with a loaded shotgun beside his bed. Mary wore a small cloth pouch around her neck containing protective herbs and prayers, knowledge passed down from her grandmother. The twins, meanwhile, had developed into even more unsettling young women. Despite their isolation, they somehow possessed knowledge that seemed impossible given their circumstances. Mary once overheard them discussing in detail the streets of New York City, a place none of the family had ever visited. When they noticed her listening, they fell immediately silent, turning to stare at her with their identical amber eyes until she retreated. Their physical appearance had evolved as well. Both stood nearly 6 feet tall, an unusual height for women of that era. Their movements remained perfectly synchronized, and they often communicated without speaking. Most disturbing was their complete lack of emotional attachment to anyone, including their mother. In July of 1949, Dr. William Harrington, who had delivered the twins 18 years earlier, received an unexpected visitor at his clinic in Eminence. Isaiah Caldwell Jr. arrived just before closing, looking exhausted and terrified. He requested a private conversation, and what he shared with the doctor that evening would later become part of the official record in a case that would shock the entire region. Isaiah revealed that he believed his nieces were not simply disturbed, but actively malevolent. He described witnessing them standing over his sleeping father, Jeremiah, their hands hovering inches above his chest while they whispered in their strange private language. When they noticed Isaiah watching, they smiled identical smiles that never reached their eyes. "They ain't natural, Doc," Isaiah was recorded as saying. "Something ain't right in their blood. Mary finally told me the truth about their daddy being our brother, Thomas. It's like all the sins of our family got concentrated in them girls." Isaiah went on to describe other disturbing behaviors, the twins collecting and preserving dead animals, speaking in unison in what sounded like Latin, and most alarmingly, their apparent ability to influence the minds of others, causing a person to stand motionless for hours or follow simple commands through intense eye contact. Dr. Harrington, a man of science, was skeptical of Isaiah's more fantastic claims. However, as a physician familiar with genetic inheritance, he recognized the potential dangers of the severe inbreeding in the Caldwell line. He agreed to visit the family property the following weekend, ostensibly to check on Jeremiah's health. That visit would never occur. 3 days after Isaiah's meeting with Dr. Harrington, the Caldwell cabin burned to the ground. When authorities finally made their way to the remote property, they found the charred remains of 3 individuals, later identified as Jeremiah, Isaiah, and Mary Caldwell. Of the twins, there was no sign. The investigation was cursory at best. Rural law enforcement in 1949 had little interest in a black family's tragedy. The fire was officially ruled accidental. Dr. Harrington, however, was not satisfied. His conversation with Isaiah had raised too many disturbing questions. He began his own investigation, reaching out to other physicians in surrounding counties, looking for information about the missing twins or similar cases of genetic abnormalities. His inquiries led him to a disturbing discovery. In neighboring Carter County, a family named Jackson had recently taken in 2 young women who matched the description of Abigail and Nora. According to local gossip, the family's only son had fallen mysteriously ill shortly after the young women's arrival. Dr. Harrington documented his findings in a series of journal entries. He noted the twins' identifiable characteristics, their extreme height, amber eyes, and the syndactylly fused fingers on their left hands. He also noted their most distinctive behavioral trait, their tendency to move, speak, and think in perfect unison. The doctor's final journal entry regarding the twins was dated November 12, 1949. "I have located A and N at the Jackson homestead near Van Buren. We'll travel there tomorrow to confirm identities and assess the condition of the Jackson boy. If they are indeed responsible for the deaths in their family, they must be institutionalized before they can harm others. Their condition represents the most severe case of genetic deterioration through consanguinity I have encountered in my career." Dr. Harrington's vehicle was found abandoned on a rural road the following day. Despite an extensive search, no trace of the doctor was ever found. The official investigation concluded he may have been set upon by robbers or wild animals. At the Jackson property, the two young women stayed for 3 more weeks before departing suddenly one night in early December. By then, both the Jackson son and his father had died of an undiagnosed wasting illness. Both men's eyes had turned a milky white before death. For nearly 2 years following their disappearance from the Jackson property, Abigail and Nora Caldwell seemed to vanish completely. No official records documented their movements. It was as if they had simply ceased to exist. The truth, pieced together decades later by historian Dr. Eleanor Whitman of Missouri State University, revealed a disturbing pattern of movement and destruction. Through examination of local archives, death records, and personal accounts, Dr. Whitman was able to track what she called the Twins' Trail of Whispers across the Ozarks from late 1949 through 1951. What makes this case so fascinating from a historical perspective, Dr. Whitman wrote in her 1998 paper, is how the twins' movement perfectly mapped the hidden connections between isolated black communities in the region. They followed bloodlines and family connections that weren't documented officially, revealing a network of relationships that historians had previously overlooked. The first confirmed sighting after the Jackson incident came in February 1950, when the twins appeared at the home of Esther Williams, an elderly woman living alone outside of Poplar Bluff, Missouri. According to Williams' neighbor, Martha Jenkins, the old woman claimed the twins were her great-nieces coming to care for her. Jenkins reported that Williams began to deteriorate rapidly after the twins' arrival. "Those girls gave me a bad feeling right from the start," Jenkins later said. "The way they moved together like they was connected by invisible strings. And their eyes, Lord, those eyes weren't right." Esther Williams died 3 weeks after the twins' arrival. The cause was recorded as natural causes. The twins disappeared the night after her funeral. Their next appearance was documented in a small black church community near Mountain View, Arkansas, in April 1950. There they presented themselves as orphaned cousins seeking distant relatives. The local pastor, Reverend Samuel Green, and his wife offered them shelter. Within a month, tragedy struck. The pastor's 2 young children fell ill with a severe fever and died within days of each other. Reverend Green, driven mad with grief, claimed in his Sunday sermon that demons wearing human skin had brought death into his home. The day after this service, both Reverend Green and his wife were found dead in their home, having consumed poison. The twins were nowhere to be found. I need you to say, "The twisted fate of the Caldwell bloodline haunts me to this day," in the comments if you're still watching. This helps me know who truly values these historical investigations, ***. Through the summer and fall of 1950, similar patterns emerged. 2 strange young women would appear, claiming family connections. Deaths would follow, typically preceded by mysterious illnesses. Then the women would vanish. Remarkable was their ability to navigate between isolated communities with no apparent means of transportation, covering challenging distances with ease. By early 1951, whispers about the deadly twins had begun to spread. Descriptions grew increasingly fantastical. Some claimed they could transform into animals or read minds. While these were exaggerations, they spoke to the genuine terror the twins inspired. In March 1951, the pattern changed. The twins appeared in West Plains, Missouri, and sought employment. They were hired as night attendants at the Pine Ridge Sanatorium, a tuberculosis facility. The hiring doctor, James Morrison, would later report being strangely compelled to offer them positions. "I remember interviewing them, but the details are foggy," Morrison stated. "When I tried to refuse them employment, the words wouldn't come." The twins worked at Pine Ridge for nearly 6 months, their longest documented stay. During this time, patient mortality rates increased dramatically, though no suspicion fell on the night attendants. What ultimately brought attention was their behavior. A day nurse, Clara Johnson, reported observing them standing over a patient's bed, hands hovering over his chest, whispering in their unified manner. When they noticed her, they turned in perfect unison to stare. Johnson claimed she was unable to move or speak for several minutes. It was like being frozen in ice, she recalled. I felt something cold moving around inside my mind. By the time an investigation was launched, the twins had disappeared, taking with them patient files and Dr. Morrison's journals. The final confirmed sighting came in September 1951 in Salem, Missouri. There they appeared at the office of Dr. Richard Evans, a physician known for genetic disorder research. Dr. Evans, who had corresponded with the missing Dr. Harrington, immediately recognized the twins and contacted law enforcement. According to witness statements, the twins seemed aware of his intentions. They spoke only once, in unison, "We know what we are. We have always known." Then, an inexplicable darkness filled the room. When it receded, Evans was found unconscious and the twins were gone. Evans survived but was never the same, suffering from severe PTSD. Among his effects was a sealed envelope containing the words, "Some bloodlines are too damaged to continue. Some knowledge is too dangerous to pursue. I have seen what human genetics can create when pushed beyond natural boundaries. God help us all." After the Salem incident, no further credible sightings were ever confirmed. Rumors persisted for decades, but nothing substantial. The mystery of what became of Abigail and Nora Caldwell remains unsolved. The case might have remained a disturbing footnote were it not for the scientific documentation that surrounded them. Unlike many historical cases of cursed individuals, the twins left behind medical records and physicians' notes that provide a chilling glimpse into the effects of severe genetic inbreeding. In 1972, Dr. Eleanor Whitman, then a young historian, discovered a cache of Dr. Harrington's documents hidden in a false wall during the renovation of his old clinic. The discovery was a breakthrough. According to Harrington's notes, the Caldwell family had practiced cousin marriage for at least 3 generations before Mary. Geographic isolation and social ostracism had severely restricted marriage options. By the time Mary was born in 1908, the family's genetic diversity had been critically compromised. Harrington had documented various physical manifestations of genetic disorders throughout the family: Mary's misshapen foot, her brother Joseph's extra fingers, polydactyly, and Jeremiah's progressive blindness. These were consistent with recessive disorders becoming expressed due to increased homozygosity. The most disturbing aspect concerned the twins themselves. His delivery notes indicated both were born with identical abnormalities: fused fingers, unusual irises, and most notably, conjoined neural tissue at the base of their skulls. This led him to speculate about neurological abnormalities. The genetic implications of brother-sister procreation, compounded by generations of cousin marriage, creates a terrifying possibility, Harrington wrote. Recessive traits, both physical and neurological, will express themselves with devastating consequences. I fear for these children. Modern genetic analysis of Harrington's descriptions, conducted by Dr. Michael Chen of Johns Hopkins in 2001, suggested the twins likely suffered from a rare form of Craniopagus parasiticus, where the connection was minimal and primarily neural. This could explain their synchronized movements, shared language, and apparent ability to communicate without speaking, Dr. Chen wrote. Their neural connection may have been extensive, creating a shared consciousness unlike anything documented. The psychological implications were equally disturbing. Dr. Eliza Montgomery, a psychiatric historian, proposed that their lack of empathy and predatory behavior might be explained by their unique neurological condition and severe childhood isolation. These were children born of a traumatic origin, raised in isolation, and likely aware they were different, Montgomery explained. Add shared consciousness, and you have a perfect storm for the development of a shared psychopathy. They may have created their own moral universe. The twins' apparent ability to influence others remains the most controversial aspect. While many dismissed these accounts, Dr. Montgomery offered a nuanced analysis. Individuals with psychopathic tendencies often display an uncanny ability to manipulate others. In the case of identical twins with shared consciousness and striking appearance, this effect might be dramatically amplified. Witnesses might experience what feels like supernatural compulsion when in reality they are being manipulated by two individuals operating with perfect synchronicity. The genetic aspects have been extensively analyzed. Dr. Harrington's documentation allowed researchers to calculate an estimated inbreeding coefficient for the twins. Modern analysis suggests their parents, Mary and Thomas, already had a high coefficient due to generations of cousin marriage. As the product of sibling parents who were already inbred, Abigail and Nora would have had an extraordinarily high inbreeding coefficient, virtually guaranteeing the expression of recessive disorders. The Caldwell case, while exceptional, provides important historical context for understanding the biological and social consequences of isolated communities, concluded Dr. Whitman. The tragedy represents the intersection of multiple historical forces: racial segregation forcing families into isolation, poverty limiting mobility, and early 20th century medical knowledge being insufficient to address genetic isolation. On a crisp autumn morning in 1976, Sheriff Robert Miller of Dent County, Missouri, received a call about an abandoned cabin deep in the woods near Salem. Hikers had discovered something disturbing inside. Miller expected a moonshine operation, but what he found would haunt him until his dying day. The cabin was small but meticulously maintained. Inside, the walls were covered with hundreds of photographs, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes, all connected by red string in an elaborate web. At the center were two faded photographs of identical young women with pale skin and amber eyes, Abigail and Nora. The cabin's occupant was gone, but had left behind a comprehensive record of decades spent tracking the twins. Newspaper clippings documented unexplained deaths across Missouri, Arkansas, and Kentucky between 1951 and 1974. Photographs showed distant images of tall, identical women. Maps marked with red pins traced a pattern connecting communities with histories of genetic isolation. Most disturbing was a leather-bound journal containing detailed notes on a scientific investigation. The writer had been collecting DNA samples from deceased individuals in communities where the twins had been spotted, using technical sophistication decades ahead of its time. The final entry, dated just 3 weeks before the cabin's discovery, read, "They know I'm following them. Yesterday, I saw them standing at the edge of the clearing watching my cabin. They haven't aged a day since the photographs from 1951. Whatever they've become, they're no longer bound by human limitations. God forgive me for my role in creating them." The Caldwell bloodline should have ended generations ago. The identity of the cabin's occupant was never confirmed, though Sheriff Miller suspected Dr. Richard Evans, who had disappeared a month prior. The file was eventually archived and forgotten until historians rediscovered it in the early 2000s. In the following decades, the legend grew. Reports occasionally surfaced of identical women matching their description, always preceding unexpected deaths, always vanishing before investigation. In 1998, the case took an unexpected turn. Genetic researcher Dr. Samantha Reynolds, investigating DNA patterns in isolated Ozark communities, uncovered a distinct genetic signature present in about 5% of the population across multiple communities. What makes this marker so unusual, Dr. Reynolds wrote, is that it appears to have entered these diverse populations relatively recently, within the past 50 to 70 years, yet is identical in each. This suggests a common source moving between otherwise isolated genetic pools. The implications were disturbing. If connected to the twins, it suggested they had not only survived but integrated their genetic material into multiple family lines. In 2012, this theory gained unexpected support. During a dam excavation near the original Caldwell property, workers uncovered caves containing ritual spaces. Carbon dating placed the most recent activities in the early 1970s. The caves contained disturbing arrangements of bones and dozens of mummified human fetuses, all with genetic abnormalities consistent with severe inbreeding. Dr. Julia Martinez, the forensic anthropologist, concluded, "Whatever occurred here represents a systematic attempt to manipulate human genetics through methods combining primitive ritual with surprisingly advanced understanding." The investigation was abruptly closed in 2013, the caves sealed, and the evidence classified. The final chapter, if indeed it has ended, came in the winter of 2020 when a retired nurse named Margaret Wilson came forward with a deathbed confession. Wilson, who worked at an Arkansas clinic in the 1960s, claimed multiple encounters with the twins between 1964 and 1968. She said they would appear during night shifts, requesting specific medications and supplies, including drugs that would later be recognized as affecting DNA replication. "They never threatened me directly," Wilson stated. "They didn't need to. Those eyes could hold you in place." They spoke together about their great work, creating a new bloodline that would spread throughout the hills. Most disturbing was her final claim. In their last visit in November 1968, the twins said they no longer needed her assistance because they had finally perfected the method. When Wilson asked what they meant, they responded in unison, "Our blood now walks through many. Even when these bodies fail, we will continue. The hills remember, nurse. The hills will always remember." Wilson's testimony, while compelling, could not be verified, though her detailed descriptions matched earlier accounts. Today, the legacy of the Caldwell twins remains a disturbing footnote. Scientific research into the genetic consequences of isolation has advanced, with their case often cited as an extreme example. Public health initiatives now include genetic counseling, though they remain underfunded. However, the twins are more than a case study. They have become folklore, a cautionary tale about isolation and the dangers of interfering with natural bloodlines. The persistent fear remains that somewhere in the remote hollows, two ageless women with amber eyes may still be walking, watching, waiting to continue their terrible work. As one elderly resident of Shannon County said in 2015, "Some say they're still out there, those devil twins. Some say they died long ago. But the real truth is worse. Their blood is in these hills now, mixed into families that don't even know it. And sometimes, when cousins marry cousins, those old genes wake up. You'll see it in a child born with strange eyes or twins that talk in whispers. The Caldwells ain't gone. They're just waiting in the blood." If you've watched until the end, it's because you appreciated this historical investigation. Please subscribe. Leave a comment saying, "I watched until the end, so I can know who truly values these stories." And don't forget to like and share this video with anyone who appreciates uncovering the dark truths of American history.